How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I
It's good to
love your
see you.
studio. Oh my God. It's like so nice looking at the mess that you have behind you.
So this is my second interview that I've done for this series, and
Okay.
on the last one, I made an active effort, and I spent probably 3 or 4 hours trying to clean up, to look like a presentable person, to look like someone who's not a hoarder or pack rat or burrowing
You're
type of
supposed to be
animal.
a hoarder. You're
I
supposed
know.
to be a hoarder. You're an artist.
So today I just decided I would embrace it, and
It looks really cool.
this is what it looks like at the moment.
Nice.
When I was at Sharp Wilderness, I had a trash corner. It was
Uh-huh.
useful trash. It was like
Yep.
recyclables for sculptures and things. It was
Yep.
probably like a 7 by 7 foot square of just
Right.
mounds of cups, cereal boxes, twine,
Oh my
whatever.
goodness. Yeah, definitely. Well, I decided to recycle some of the old prints that I had, and I have like a drawer that is like I can't really open it. It's full of junk and crap. I was like, I'm gonna do something to them. So I'm trying, and some of them are actually nice. It's funny that when you look at them after a couple of years, you're like something that looked like crap to you at that time doesn't look that bad. So I'm glad that I have that, hoarding um, habit as well.
It's shocking how much we just make the same imagery
Yeah.
or work with the same ideas, but it's also very strange how they feel the gulf between the original thing and the thing that we're doing now. It feels so like psychically vast, but in
Yeah.
reality for the viewer, they're like, oh, those two were those painted in
Yeah.
the same week or whatever.
I know. I
I
know.
know. Tell me a little about the shifting process and the mindset for working on prints or wall works, for lack of a
Right.
better word,
Yeah, I
versus
know
working on
exactly.
the film.
What
And what do you need to do to transition? How long do you stay in each space? What is that process like for you?
um so with the film it's because they are moving images, and I don't really do storyboards. Like I have like a synopsis of what I think that the film will look like. But a lot of times, as I'm working on the frames, it will inform me what to do next. Or
Mhm.
when I'm looking at it, and Final Cut Pro, I've just started playing with it, which I love. Um,
Software upgrade time.
Yes, definitely. I tried Premiere. It wasn't for me. It drove me crazy. I was crying. But Final Cut Pro is more intuitive, I feel like. So I understand it. I understand the logic of that software. Whereas with Premiere, it was like I don't know where things are. Anyways, but it's like all these layerings that I have to do, and then I feel like, oh, I need another blob of black ink scattering on that image, so I have to go make it. You know, whereas especially with paper making versus print making, there are certain steps that you have to make sure that you know in advance, because there's a lot of prep
Mhm.
involved, right? Like if you want to have like I don't know, a black abaca on top of the print that you just made, you have to make sure that you have that abaca. You can't like really, there's a certain level of improvisation that you can't really surpass. You know what I mean? So it's like there's more planning involved. I feel like.
I think most people might think it would be the inverse because people think about lighting, shot planning, utilizing technology with making film. And especially when I see the videos you've made of you paper making, you're very much exhibiting the visceral process of shifting pigment around, and it seems quite connected to painting or drawing in
Right.
that way. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more.
It is definitely the same process for me. It's like it's all about layering, and but then I've realized that if I don't think of the variables kind of in advance, then the end result won't be what I want, right? So
Because of
yes, my paper
a
making
chemical
is
problem.
Chemical problems is like every single thing you change about paper making slash print is going to change the results. So depending on, if I'm making a pigment that I like and it's not intensely pigmented, or it's not pigmented enough, then I won't have the image that I like, because it will be very kind of like matte, for example, or faded. Um, you know what I mean? So there are these
Hmm.
little things, these variables, or if I'm pressing something in advance, if I let it stay overnight a little more than necessary, then it will be too dry to do the print on, and I'll have sticking problems, all of these little variables.
Hmm.
But definitely my print paper process is very similar to my film process. Also, my film process is very primitive still, I guess. It's kind of, by hand. I make something, I put it up there. I don't work with an editor, I don't work with a sound engineer. Everything is done by me still.
This is the best
So
way.
I guess, I mean, yeah, I would honestly, I would love to be able to work with someone resound one day.
Hmm.
Like if I can get a budget for a film, or I can afford to pay someone, that would be lovely. It's hard for me to understand sound. I have a good friend who's a editor, and he's been like teaching me a little bit. But still, it's, that is something that I would love to like outsource at some point, and I don't have to worry about it.
It's funny to hear you say that, because in the printmaking process and the paper making process, you seem quite exacting and particular. And so do you relish the idea in filmmaking that you could be that exacting and particular in a kind of directorial sense working with someone, or does it give you some freedom to just let someone else like find their space in your work through sound?
Oh, that's interesting. No, I think I will be telling the person what to do,
You're the
and
director.
they'll do it for me because I don't know how to do it. But I'm not ashamed of it. It's like I come from the painting world and the print world, and it's just all of these things that you have to think about. I don't have to be an expert in every single aspect of my practice, I
Sure.
guess.
Absolutely
Right.
not. No, absolutely not. I still understand very little about lenses and
Mhm.
ISO and whatever. I figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I thrive on trial and error.
Mm-hmm. Exactly the same. I feel like with Cut Pro, it's been the same for me. I just play around. I've been playing around, and if I like the results, then I'm like, oh, that's good. And I've started to be a little more methodical, like writing down what I did, so I can, if I need it, I can like replicate it in
Sure,
a way.
shortcuts
Um,
are huge.
yes, but it's like this is basically, it's, I am in this atmosphere, this environment that a lot of things are offered to me. And I don't know my way around it quite well, but I think that could be an advantage too, because in a way, it's like, you don't have that proper education. So you're a little less, um, I guess you're more intuitive when it comes to working with these things. And they're really fun surprises too. And there have been moments that I'm like, I did something and I don't know how to reverse it. I'm like, oh, what do I do?
Hmm. Hmm. No, I completely know what you're talking about. And when it comes to new software equipment or something like that, for me, I there's a steep learning curve to carve out my little world in that thing. But once I've found my little world in there, I can feel comfortable and then maybe dip my toes in other areas if I need to. But I
Yeah.
have a pretty clean idea like what's important to me, and it
Hmm.
kind of translates from thing to thing, software to software, equipment to equipment, and um, it's both it's both wonderful and challenging to be presented with a new set of tools.
Correct. Yeah. And I think it's the same. It's interesting that you're mentioning that, because it's the same in paper making, print making, and filmmaking. All of them have their own set of tools. Um, And with filmmaking, because what I do is very much handmade and tactile, I guess it has direct connection to to the works on paper. But yes, it's a different kind of group of things that are available to you.
Sure.
And as an artist, you learn how to navigate between these worlds.
Yes. And you are the through line. You maintain a kind of consistency. You
I
can do
hope so.
anything. You could do anything, and you would bring your certain Nazness to it, your sensibility. Let me ask you a question. So you were talking a bit about what you called the primitive nature of your films, which I disagree with, for the record.
Okay.
Your first film that you released is Elite 1984, right?
Correct.
And you released that film maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think 2018, I think.
And you won a NIFA film grant just last year or the year before.
Yes.
That's a pretty incredible turnaround time from releasing your first film and a year or two later winning a NIFA film grant, which is a very prestigious award, very well known and respected in the New York arts community. What was that experience like? From the way you considered yourself to the way all of these other people were clearly considering you. What were you feeling?
It was great. Honestly, it's been one of the highlights of my career, not just because of the grant or the fellowship, but it was in a way, and I know, and I'm not even sure if I want to say that to the world, but it felt like people can see what I'm doing, and there was this sense of validation because for a long time I was like, I could see that people are responding to the films.
Mhm.
And in general, I had like really positive feedback. So it felt like, okay, this is the right direction for me. I am going to the place that seems like it is the way. I did not always receive the same type of feedback with my works on paper, or like my paintings. So when I got that fellowship or got the grant, I was like, oh, so it means that I am making something that people are connecting to, and they're seeing my process, my crazy, time consuming, really weird way of doing things is being appreciated. So I guess that was the most important thing about the NIFA fellowship for me, that sense of validation, I guess.
Do you still have that kind of tenuous feeling of maybe not knowing exactly if you're going the right direction, having a good feeling, but feeling an edginess? And stop me if I'm putting words in your mouth. Do you still get a little bit of that edge as you're making film now and as you're working on the new piece? This Bitter Earth is the title of the new piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or are you feeling a little more locked in, kind of
No, I feel
confidence?
I'm very comfortable actually in this medium now. I guess this would be my fourth one. I think like animators and filmmakers make many, many more in 5 or 6 years, but I've
Not
only managed to
necessarily.
make 4.
Not
So,
necessarily. Everyone's different.
yeah. No, but right now I feel like for the foreseeable future, as far as I can see, filmmaking will be part of my practice for sure. I always wanted to. I feel like my work was narrative. It had a sense of narration to it, and it was something that it was hard to do with still images, but with moving images, it's kind of definitely more doable. I feel like I'm able to transfer my ideas and my feelings better in the moving image aspect of my work. But I am still very much in love with still images. It's
Mhm.
like that's why a lot of times I still like, if you wake me up in the middle of the night, I will consider myself a painter still. Although none of the things that I do are considered painting
Mhm.
anymore, even in the non-traditional sense, right? But that's what I think is important about my work, that my approach to it comes from a painter's kind of struggles with a canvas or like, a substrate that you want to do things to it. Same as with my printmaking in a way.
Mhm.
That's why I feel like I like all these washes and splashes and, expressive gestures, etc.
Absolutely. So when you were making Elite 1984, for example, I'm assuming that you were coming at that project very much with a painter's vocabulary. And now that you have a few more films under your belt and more experience, and you've pushed your boundaries a little bit more, do you find that you're still coming with painter's vocabulary, or have you created a completely new vocabulary for yourself in film, animation, moving image world, whatever we want to call it? We don't need to get hung up on labels, but it is a different approach. But obviously the vocabulary is, they talk to each other. Are you finding you're always in the same kind of frame in the language you're using with yourself, or is it a bigger shift?
I think I hope I'm moving forward and expanding the language. I've started being a little more blunt with the usage of found footage. I think before I was more shy in Pearl, I had those images of the footage of the flood, which I kind of shot with my own iPhone and kind of make sure that it's like super pixelated. And the riptide, the glacier melt was like, it was really, really manipulated. In This Bare Earth, I am using films that people put on social media of the Beirut blast and of the downing of the plane. And I'm kind of using them as is, with little bit of like manipulation. To me, it feels like a big step, because I'm also more actively thinking about the role of archives and what it means to incorporate it into your own work. How much of a artistic manipulation is needed to claim something as your own, right? I always thought like I have to do so much to something to be able to make it mine, right? It was always that feel like, because I'm a maximalist, I guess, I always felt like, okay, if I print out that image without adding anything to it, then it's not mine. It's what did I do to it? It's like, whatever, I took something, right?
You needed to claim it in some way, right?
Right. But I think I'm making peace with that. And as it's kind of put into a bigger frame, then I don't always see the need to really manipulate things to the extreme, I guess. So
yeah,
that is changing my perspective and language a little bit.
that's a big shift. And when it comes to subject matter in your video works in general, it seems like they move between this personal footage, the Super 8 footage of, I'm assuming it's your mother dancing, there's a birthday party, these kind of very symbolic scenes for you. There's footage of these kind of natural events, iceberg, ice flow, flood, mountain, and then there's also the movement of the hand and the expressive gesture that can kind of move over anything at any one time. Is there any kind of hierarchy amongst these approaches or these types of imagery, the subject matter, or are you trying to weigh and balance them so that they're all in communion with each other? Does it bounce around? What are you thinking about there, and in the process of putting these films together and editing them and thinking about the progression of the film going on in your head?
I feel like I always have started with the Super 8s. That's the very first thing that I start with. And then as I'm thinking, I have a little notebook with all the notes and ideas that, I need to, my next project is going to be about airplanes or airports, so I have like these little words or ideas that come to my mind, and I write them somewhere. And usually it has been like that when I start with the Super 8, it kind of tells me what to do next. So if there is any hierarchy, I guess it would be with a personal family kind of archives. That is also something that I want to stay away a little bit from now on. Or it's a challenge that, not a challenge, but it's something that it's on my mind all the time. Sometimes I feel like because they're so close to me, and they're so personal to me, maybe I cannot see certain things about them, right? So I promised myself that I won't be working with that specific Super 8 anymore, but I couldn't resist. So I made This Bitter Earth based on that as well. But hopefully for the next film that I've started thinking about, I asked a couple of my friends to send me old family films and videos, VHS and stuff like that. So it's still kind of like close, but it's not personal, you know? And with This Bitter Earth, I'm really embracing the idea of collective history, you know, with all these footage and images that really don't belong to me. And they were made by other people. They're not necessarily personal in a sense that, you know, they're like immediate. And that's what I want to do. I want to like expand my world, because I feel like I keep talking about the idea of universal versus personal. And that is the kind of a delicate line that I want to walk, to still keep them personal, but kind of. So my question for myself in the near future is like, am I able to make the same type of feeling or sense of heaviness that I keep thinking about out of things that were made entirely by others and I have no connection to them, you know?
Yeah, the only piece of This Bitter Earth I've seen was that small snippet that you showed me and my students
Yeah, that was
in the
lovely.
fall.
Right.
And one of the things that really stuck with me is it's a technique that you've used in the past, which is the insertion of a kind of plane, another like almost cut out surface that has a different action or something happening over it. And I noticed that you created at least one or two alternate planes on the surface that felt very much like screens, viewports, windows of some kind. And it distinctly gave the film a completely different feel in its relationship to the viewer. The previous films have a more, and I'm not talking about depth. The films have
Right.
tons of depth, but I'm talking more about just the sort of sensation of having the film presented to your eyeballs. The new film felt like you were getting some distance a little bit, and there's more relationship to who's watching this and how are they watching it.
Right.
And that would make a lot of sense to me with what you're talking about using more universal personal imagery, finding some kind of nucleus amongst the footage
Right.
from your friends and family that they've sent you. How is your connection to the material? Because I imagine the connection with the old Super 8 footage from your dad gives you a kind of sensation as you're working with it. Do you get that same sensation working with this other footage? Does that matter? Did that sensation feel like kind of the crutch that you were talking about, and that's why you wanted to push it away?
Definitely all the footage that I've been using have made a big impact on me. You know, because like when you search Beirut blast, for example, there are numerous videos that people have captured, and some of them they hit a nerve, and I've been using those. Right. There may be other things that are actually even better, but I just like to use the one that felt really, you know, really touched me. For lack of a better word, I don't know how to describe it. So yes, I think that's the approach to it. And in terms of like, you know, putting things on top of each other, This Bitter Earth for this project, and I've been doing it for other ones more before, but I feel like on this I've been doing it more consciously. It's about looking at same events from different angles. So none of the works on paper that I created are the images that you see in the film. For example, like if there's this giant Beirut blast, that still image that I made with pulp screen printing, You will see a Beirut blast in the film, but it won't be the same thing. It won't be the same angle. It won't be the same source, right? Same is with the crash, and with the a little less about the withdrawal of the U.S. Air Force, because there's only one video
Not as
that
much
was
footage.
really viral, and I really love that one. I want to use it. But it's like with making those kind of polygon, I don't know, hexagon, whatever the things. I'm also thinking about the space within the film, like, you know, thinking as I'm also thinking about like installations. How do I want to show my work, the video and the work on paper, that is not just one thing on the wall that you see the film and then boom, 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 like, you know, the works on paper. How do I want to engage that space? I'm also thinking about how I want to engage people in the space of the film, as if the thing that you're seeing has its own kind of like foreground, background, and you can walk in and out of these spaces. So with a lot of those, what I've been doing is like I make, you know, paintings or like stop motions on a separate kind of piece. And then I impose or overimpose that stop motion onto the footage. And then I start distorting it and kind of like cut it, crop it, and make things out of it, so that I can have one thing really kind of on top of another one, but in a somewhat of a translucent, transparent kind of a format.
Those moments feel like a totally different headspace in a good way.
I hope so. Right.
And
I hope so. I hope that I can get there. I also am thinking of like, you know, maybe certain type of shocking the viewer. Again, for the lack of a better word, I'm not sure if shock is the right word. But these Super 8 moments are really sweet. And as much as I feel like they are sad, they're heroic, there's this sense of, you know, tension and, you know, this kind of a doom and gloom kind of in them. But overall, the reality is these are sweet family moments. And I'm trying to think of, you know, kind of like having a boom, both visually and contextually, kind of. And I feel like those kind of, you know, shapes and this back and forth with the spaces can kind of create that, you know, kind of a, what just happened? What am I looking at? Something like that.
do you think your conceptual mind is helping protect you from the intensity of some of the footage that you're using? Because when you're in the editing process, you were watching some pretty horrific stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah.
How are you able? Do you find yourself using a form of compartmentalization, or do you naturally, are you able to have some distance because of your role as an artist? And
I think it gets a little better. When I start, it's not that great. It's very emotional. But as I watch it over and over and over again, I get a little bit immune to it. I made a film a couple of weeks ago. A gallery asked me to participate in a group show for like women life freedom movement. And I had like you know, mixed feelings, because I feel like I do want to do something, but I also felt like we're in the middle of it. How do I really react or reflect? PS 752 happened 3 years ago. It took me 3 years to be able to like actually sit down and do something. Anyways, I decided to make a short film. There's a projector that you see, a kind of a high-speed clip of all of these found videos of people in the streets protesting, you know, running. Everything is super abstract. They're running, they're filming the wall, they're filming the floor, you know, but you can hear people screaming and yelling and this and that. So it's like really bunch of like weird camera moves. And then certain things that you can see here and there. And on another small iPhone, on the back, so you're looking here, and on the back there's like a small tablet or iPhone that has the videos of the actual citizens being killed in the street, and people were filming them, like, bleeding, like they go up to their, head, and you see them like bleeding from the head, or like people carrying the bodies. And what I did was like these, the blurry images were taken from the same source. So it's like, it's the same film, that there's a part that people are really running, and then they get to the body. So I cut the running into one space, and then put the body into another space.
And the viewer's stuck in the middle.
Yeah, and then you're like, and also I felt like these are gore images. I also don't want to torture my viewers. I don't want to force them to look at these things, but these are footage that they will be erased from the history. They won't be published anywhere on social media or on news sources. We will forget about these atrocities, for sure. And I felt like, and that was my like existential question, that is art the right place? Is the art world the right place for me to like capture these horrendous moments of seeing like a 17-year-old bleeding to death in the streets of Tehran, right? And that really, it nearly killed me. The project that I gave, honestly, I don't know how good the editing is, because it was really hard for me to look at those things. It was hard for me to edit it. I don't know how hard it is for other people to look at it. There are a lot of problems with the sound, I'm sure, but it was insane. It was so intense. It's definitely less like that with This Bitter Earth. There's a much bigger kind of distance, I feel like, maybe because the sources are not as violent, although the concept is still very much violent, but at least what you're looking at is not all of these, pure barbarism, I guess.
Wow, it sounds very, very visceral. Do you find any catharsis at any point? Or is it just another layer put on top of you?
I don't know. I don't know. I've learned to live with it, I feel like. So, yeah, probably another layer, I guess. I guess, probably. But I can't really tell, honestly, at this moment that we're talking. It's hard to like realize what is going on in my head with everything that is, with everything that is happening, and all of these, maneuvering between events. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but so life is not very simple. Unfortunately, sometimes I tell my friends that we're not the first people who are being barbarically and savagely killed and massacred, and the world has watched in silence, and we won't be the last, unfortunately. So the thing is, like, what can we do to make sure that these things remain in history? First of all, what can we do as citizens to make things better, and try to change? But as an artist, I feel like, what can I do to make my contribution to these moments and make sure that they remain in our collective memory? That 60 years from now, exactly like the moving photographs from the Vietnam War, or even the Civil War in the US, when you look at them and they're so unbelievable, what can we do to make sure that we make our contribution to those things? I don't know. I'm sorry. I hope it doesn't sound obnoxious, but
I don't think so at
these
all.
are like genuine questions in my head.
No, I don't think it sounds obnoxious at all. And I appreciate you sharing. This project that you were showing in this most recent show, the Visceral Project, the two sides, is that the only piece that you've made lately that very directly and kind of in an isolated way approaches what's happening in Iran and protests and the violence? Because it seems like This Bitter Earth and Pearl, there's a broader perspective happening. Do you see yourself moving into that hyper isolated space again, or was that more related to this opportunity or the exhibition? I mean,
Right. No, I understand. So far, that's the only thing that I've made that is very directly about women life freedom. But I feel like just like how revolution really changed a lot of artists' work, this movement will change our works too, because it's so vast and it's so big that you really can't stay indifferent towards it. Um, with This Bitter Earth, it was a conscious decision when I first started making it, because I wanted to make something that is not only about Iran, and my work is not just about Iran, but the sources have been mostly from Iran. So I felt like this kind of this idea of, the melancholy or the black mood that is shared by millions, that spirit of the region. I want to talk about it. I want to capture it. And as I started thinking about the airplane and the crash, then I was like, oh my God, the Air Force, the US Air Force. And then, looking at the footage of the explosion, or of the explosion of the airplane, then it reminded me of the explosion of Beirut. So they kind of all came together. So I feel like This Bitter Earth is about us as people, in a way, like, specifically the people of the region, but like us, the citizens of the world, and everything that we have to endure every day, especially bombarded with the news and, all these videos that is really hard to watch. Because like when you look at the airplane leaving Kabul, and you see all these people hanging onto this giant iron bird, of course people know that they won't survive, right? Like, this is something that sometimes bothers me, that people belittle them, and they're like,
Mm.
how can they be so stupid? How can they like cling on to I'm like, literally, we're talking about a chaotic situation, that the air is safer than the land. And this is something that I guess a lot of times people don't understand. And I hope that in my films or my work, somehow you can convey that sense, that something that I can't even put into words, that what it means for you, for a person to get to a point that feels like, you know what, I'm gonna hang on to this for 10 more seconds, because I
Yeah.
don't want to stay here for 10 more seconds.
Yeah, I guess that you're talking about utilizing a kind of empathy in the image presentation, which is absolutely vital, I think, because anxiety and fear will make us be capable of doing absolutely anything. And we all need to understand that.
Right.
The idea to belittle those images or to have no connection with them, we all have connection to that pain.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. I think pain is a good word to use to explain or describe what is it that we're going through, and how are we going to react to this.
Hey, let me ask you something from a slightly different angle. We've known each other a couple of years now, and I have always considered you to be a very funny person, and
Thank you.
a very witty person. And I'm curious how you're able to utilize that very natural part of your personality in this image making. Is it something that's not accessible right now? Or are you accessing it in a different way? Do you have a sense of that?
Oh, I wish I could be funny in my works. I don't think I am. I really envy artists who are witty in their works. Like one of my most favorite people, David Hockney. Every time I look at his work, I'm like, how can you be so fresh and witty, right? And I miss that. And I don't think I have that in my work. I think my work is a little grumpy. It's a little too serious. And yes, I should try to utilize it. Also, it's also funny that you think I'm funny, because not everyone thinks I'm funny. Eli thinks I'm funny, but there are very
That's
few
important.
people that think I'm funny.
That's important. Key to a successful relationship is humor.
Yes. I think my moms and my sisters think I'm funny, but I don't think I'm known as a funny person. I'm loud. I'm kind of like, a little bit kind of strong when I talk. I talk a lot, as you know. So I don't know.
Communication
Yes.
and honesty and vulnerability, these things feel very closely linked to humor to me,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
because we can find ways of sharing. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about your practice right now, or your time at Dieu Donné, or the material you're working with, the film?
one really interesting aspect of my time at Dieu Donné was understanding or getting familiar to this entirely different process of making things, and changing my perspective about what it means to work with paper. Because paper to me, as even as a printmaker, and you think that you know a lot about paper, you have your favorite type of paper, you know how it reacts to variety of techniques. It's a substrate, that you do things to it. Whereas the way we do things at Do Today, it's very much you're dealing with this live material, fibers, organic things. And it changes all the time. It's like making a really tiny or very thin sculpture. It's
Mm.
like thinking about that. You're building things on top of each other, which in a way it's like me layering things when I'm doing, my prints or even my films. So that's been very, very interesting to me. How and also the aspect of the tactility, kind of, how it's different to your, it feels different in your hand, like touching a different pulp, touching cotton is feels different from touching abaca, and then it shows in the work as well. So that's been quite interesting. I feel like, and I think even if I don't make paper in the way that I'm doing it right now for, like, in 10 years, I'm pretty sure this will have deep effects into how I'm thinking about my work. Also, paper making is all about like pressing things, and
Mhm.
like the amount of water and pressure, and like how the steps that you take into getting places. So that's also interesting, thinking about how you remove materials from their components, and how you add things back to them again to make something new. Like you beat the pulp, um, you add water to it, but then you have to press it. So you remove a lot of water from you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
like this constant back and forth between playing with that thing. It's quite interesting to me. So
Well, I'm excited to see all the works, because what I've seen online, it looks beautiful. And I love the entire concept that image and material are, they're formulating at the exact same time. That's just lovely. I get hung up pretty regularly when I make a new panel or
right.
surface or substrate,
Hmm.
and making
Hmm.
those initial marks. There's such a disconnect there at
Right.
times. And the fact that you can build it all up at the same time is very lovely and kind of unifying and whole
Yeah.
concept. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see them.
Yes. I'll send out the official invite soon. The press release is not out. Ileana's working on it, but I think next week. And I'm excited about the show too. I think I also want to see them on the wall. I've been looking at them um, constantly, but I feel like once they're up there in a kind of a, nice order, well thought out plan, then it will probably, I will be able to actually see them for the first time after a very long time. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Well, good luck getting everything ready. And thank you so much for talking with us
Of
here
course.
at Evergreen. This is for our series about experimental animators, filmmakers, artists, called Material Worlds. Very snazzy title, I know.
I love that.
It's always good talking to you.
Yeah, same,
Thanks, Naz.
definitely.